Yeah, how you doing? This is Anthony Brogdon again with another fine video, unbelievable information that I bring you. I bring it to you strong. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. I've been saying strong a long time. It's kind of my brand word. And so here you are at Strong Inspirations. And maybe once, twice, three, four times a week, I bring you some video content with some people who know what I like to call good Black history. And so today I have a internationally known author out of my state of Michigan who's written a tremendous book about a gentleman and the Underground Railroad. Welcome, Ann Stanton, right?
That's correct.
Ann Stanton, welcome to Strong Inspiration. Thanks for joining us.
I'm so pleased to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out to just share some about your book and how you got started. And so I guess that's my first question. How did you decide? Are you an author originally? Just new book writing? You've been writing for a while? What's the story?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am new to being an author. I've written, I came up as a musician. So I'd have to say I learned how to improvise and compose music. But I've always written poetry, letters, but never thought of myself as an author. But I became obsessed with an historical character and at the same time realized the lack of books particularly for children about Black history, that the very narrow range. There's maybe 35 books about Martin Luther King, 35 about Harriet Tubman, but the breadth of books available for kids was very narrow, was limited.
So yours is a children's book?
It's a young adult book. It's geared for middle school kids.
Okay.
I always saw it as a film, but I really wanted to write for kids because I felt like there's so much dystopia that's written for kids. That can make them hopeless. And there's so much about our history as Americans that has been hidden from us, even as adults, and so much less for kids. So my motivation was really for my own kids who are biracial. And I came across this character of John Parker, who was just like bigger than life.
Now, hold on, let me stop you. When you say character, he's a real life person.
He's a real life person.
A real life person that happened when?
Well, he was born in 1827.
Okay.
I first came across him in this book, Beyond the River, which is mostly about a person named Reverend John Rankin, who was a real person, who was from Tennessee, moved up to Ohio, and he preached against slavery and was instrumental in helping runaways cross the Ohio River and get further north. This book reads like a novel, but it's not a novel, it's historical. So this is a great book. So I started here, and then in here, there's a very short chapter about John Parker. And so I was like, who's this guy?
Right. I got you.
I've never heard of this man.
I never heard of him either. Yeah.
Right. So that led me to his autobiography. This is a great book.
Okay.
This book, John Parker's story was, it was only rediscovered in the 1990s, right? So he was a man who owned a foundry in Ohio, Southern Ohio, in a town called Ripley. He was a successful businessman in the mid 1800s, 1860s. His business was valued at $20,000.
Okay, let me stop you. Is he a black guy, white guy?
He's a black guy. He's a black guy.
He's a black guy with a business.
He was born into slavery in Virginia.
Okay.
He was separated from his mother when he was 8.
Okay.
Forced to walk hundreds of miles to the deep south as a little kid.
Right.
And then when he got to Louisiana or Alabama, I forget.
Okay.
Because I didn't write about that part of his life.
Yeah, sure.
he worked in a foundry, and he was really good at what he did, and he was smart. He tried to escape a bunch of times, but he was smart enough to realize, I'm too far south to run away. So he worked out an agreement with somebody, and he was able to purchase his own freedom when he was 18.
Sure.
For $1,800 at that time. It was not a small amount of money.
Oh, not at all.
So at 18, he finally got his papers to get out of there, and he came up north to Ohio and wound up living in Cincinnati.
All right. Okay.
And he was staying at a boarding house, and somebody said, hey, I'd like to help these young women who are going to try and cross the river. Can you help me?
Okay.
And he was like, hell no.
Okay.
I just got out of there. I'm not, no. This person worked on him. So he finally said, okay, I'll help you just this once. And they went and helped these young women. That's the first story in my account of his life, is him going from being reluctant to helping someone to being, to helping out. And then the story of these two young women crossing the river. There's a lot of things. Okay, I don't want to give it away.
Let me ask you this. Now, I was in Cincinnati some time ago. I was showing my film there and so on and so forth. I guess I got this right. Cincinnati was the free land, some part of Cincinnati. So once you got there, you could be considered free other than a fugitive, whatever, right? And they showed me how up in the mountains or in the hills, they had the lights. That's where they could see where to go. The big part was crossing that river from Kentucky to get to Cincinnati.
And it was a big river.
And it's a big river. I mean, it's not like you can swim across it.
It's a big river now. Now we have dams on the river. It was a bigger river back then.
Oh, so it was a bigger river to get from Kentucky to Ohio.
Right.
Okay.
So, at the beginning of my, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Now you go ahead.
Okay. So at the very start of my book, there's a story that made its way into Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is a novel.
Sure.
But there's a story of a woman called Eliza that's actually based on a true story. So in the beginning of my book, that's just one page. I tell the story of Eliza. She's a runaway who's crossing a nearly frozen river, but not exactly frozen. And she's got her small child with her, and she falls through the ice, and someone had given her a rail, like a rail for a fence, a 6-foot rail, that she tosses her child onto the frozen ice and holds the rail above her head to keep from going all the way down into the water. Okay. Comes out of the frozen water, somehow finds her child in the dark. This is happening at night. And she goes on. She falls through the ice 3 times before she gets across the river.
Wow.
So the reason I tell that story is to get a young adult. I don't even tell what race she is. We all know, right?
Sure.
But to put the reader into the mind of somebody who would put themselves at that risk, right?
Sure.
And keep going, right?
Sure.
The resilience and the fortitude of someone to do that. Well, that story took place in the town where John Parker lived.
Okay.
So
I got you.
There was a reporter. So this story, Uncle Tom's Cabin was a very famous book at the time, and it helped turn the minds of people in the North and humanized people who were enslaved. So it was a really critical book. There was a lot of controversy at the time about whether that story of Eliza crossing the river could have been true, because it's so amazing. It's such an amazing story.
Right.
And there was a reporter who came to the town in Ohio. It's called Ripley. And he was kind of snooping. He was asking people, hey, did this story really happen? And he interviewed the family of John Rankin, who is the basically the story. This is John Rankin's story.
Right.
This reporter interviewed him, and the son, John Rankin was dead by then. This was in the 1800s, but John Rankin's son said, hey, there's a guy here who's still, he knows more about this stuff than I did, because he actually lived it. You should go talk to him. And that was John Parker. So this reporter met with John Parker
Okay.
for the better part of an evening, wrote down all his stories, and that became the basis of this book.
I got you. I got you.
But that story was lost until the mid 1900s, like 100 years.
Okay.
Right. And somebody found the box that contained those notes in the archives of Duke University and said, hey, this is an interesting person.
Sure.
He helped hundreds. He owned this foundry.
Now you're saying, hold on, let me stop you. When you say he, you're talking about John
Parker.
Okay.
Yeah, Parker. Okay. Parker owned a foundry, and he was after that first time when he was convinced to help somebody help, then he moved to Ripley, which was a place where he felt that Black and white people worked together better to help people who were running. In Cincinnati, there was like a Black Underground Railroad and a white Underground Railroad. But in Ripley, he really felt like people worked together, and that was, to him, more effective.
Hold on, stop you. Let me stop you right there. You say Black and white underground. What do you mean by that? One that Black people helped and one that white people helped? What do you mean?
Well, there was one where, so apparently, I don't know, I didn't study the Underground Railroad in Cincinnati, but there were people that, you know, the white people worked their network and the Black people worked their network, and they weren't working together so much.
Okay.
This was in Parker's words, right?
All right, I got you.
That was what he saw, what he experienced. And so he moved to Ripley because he felt like it was more effective to work together.
I got you.
He actually, so when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed in 1855, I think.
Yeah, that could be
1850. He had kept the names of people that he had helped when he knew them, or the stories. Like a lot of times he didn't know the names of people, but he would say, okay, it was Tuesday, I helped 4 people cross over, blah, blah, blah. Here's their story. Well, when that fugitive slave law was enacted, he was like, I got to burn that book.
I got you.
If someone finds that book, I lose everything. I lose my business. My family loses their home. So we don't know how many people he helped cross the river, but it was over 350.
Really?
Yeah. And then when the Civil War was heating up and they were recruiting people, he would go over to Kentucky and say, look, you'll get a gun if you fight for the Union Army. Let's just go. And he would recruited people for the Union Army over in Kentucky.
Is that
Black
right?
people.
So now let me ask you this. Now he helped all these people. He helped hide them. He helped get them across the river. Do you got an idea of what he did himself to help people?
Yes. And if you read this book, you get an idea. So in my book, I tell 4 stories, right? The one is of him helping the first 2 women get across the river. There's another story where he gets word of a large group of like 10 people that are deep into Kentucky, and he goes like 25 miles into Kentucky and helps them navigate their way through this area, and they're already on the run. So he helps them. There's a lot of action involved. So then there's another story where he had employees. He actually had a couple of white employees, and one of them was the son of a slave owner in Kentucky. And this didn't sit well with his employee, that he, over time, right, over a period of months, it kind of bothered him, because Parker was pretty well known in his day for doing what he did. He had a successful business. He had agricultural tools that he patented, inventions.
Okay.
And he was well known for helping slaves escape. But
all right, let me stop you there. Okay, so you're well known to helping slaves stop. Do white people come and try to do something to you?
Oh yeah.
No, you're doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot. He was worked in a foundry, so he was big and strong. He was very smart, and he would not back down from a fight. So he always like kept a knife in his pocket, and he ran, when he would go over the river. He would row over the river regularly to help people, but he was aware that, he'd change his clothes first, so he would look like he was maybe a slave. He wouldn't look like someone who was a businessman. At one point, there's a bounty on him.
That's what I can imagine.
There was $1,000 bounty on him, which at the time was a lot of money.
Sure.
And that there's a story that he tells of going into a slave owner's home in the middle of the night to rescue an infant. He gets the child, and they get across, but as a result of that action on his part, there's a bounty of $1,000 put out in his head. And that leads into then the last story that I tell in the book, where people slave owners, whose slaves he had helped run away,
right.
Confront him directly on a steamboat where there's no escape. That leads him and a friend of his to trying to get off the boat in one of the lifeboats, and it ends poorly for his friend.
So his friend dies, gets killed, or whatever.
Yeah, his friend drowns.
Does
it? I shouldn't have told you, because that's
okay. Okay.
There were very real consequences for helping people run away. Very real consequences, and yet he was a businessman. And if you look on my website, there's a link to a book called The History of Brown County, which is a book written in the 1880s, I think, where they speak very highly of him as a businessman and community member, and kind of give a nod to the fact that he was doing this in the dead of night, right? But he had to have been very careful and very on alert at all times, because it was extremely dangerous what he was doing.
Let me ask you this. A couple of things. When you say escaped, he actually went back into the southern Kentucky, where he himself could have been captured and put back in slavery
at any time.
Okay.
At any time. He could have actually, there were people that were taking people from Ohio. There were bounty hunters who would come to Cincinnati or some of the larger towns, and just, they were supposed to get somebody who would run away, but maybe they would just grab somebody. I mean, it was there was a lot of lawlessness. And the law was unconscionable too. So
let me ask you this. How did he get him across the river? He always had a little raft and a boat.
He rode. My take on it is there was a lot of traffic across the river in these little rowboats. And people would have him tied up along the bank. But he had his own boat, yeah. You gotta read my book. You'll like it.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna tell. So show us the book. Show us the book.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, show us your book.
This is my book.
That's your book.
So it tells 4 stories from the life of John Parker. And while for an adult who's an adult reader, you can probably read it in 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. A little bit more work for a kid,
Sure,
but
sure.
It tells the truth. My goal was to be honest to the story that he told in his biography, but to tell it in a way that would be interesting for kids, you know. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write it?
Oh, I was afraid you're gonna ask that.
Yeah.
From the time I started until I actually it's on Amazon. So from the time I got started until it was on Amazon was years, because I was just motivated by seeing something that needed to be done. I didn't think of myself as the person to do it. I questioned whether, as a white person, if I should be doing that. Is this a story that only should be told by African Americans? So there was a number of years that I was, and then I'm not a writer. Then his autobiography has so many stories, and it's so rich with his voice and what he experienced. I couldn't pare it down to like, what are the important ones, you know? So I put it away. I got another job. And then in my other job, I did a lot of editing. So I learned to edit, and I became I don't think of myself as a good writer, but I'm a pretty good editor.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say that about myself. I didn't go to school as an English major or anything. Even in my book, I don't write commentary. I give you these facts. So you
right.
Down to me. When at the end of the day, you want people to get out the humanistic side of the Underground Railroad, because if we were able to say it was going on today, humanistically, these are just normal people who are saying we're helping other people in their plight.
Exactly. And I think that was when I boiled it down. After a number of years, I came back to it and I was like, first of all, what I had initially was really badly written, so I had to start over. And then I looked around and I'm like, well, still nobody's writing about them, and nobody's writing about them for kids. So I'm going to put it out there. And the reason I included the stories that I did, because there were so many to choose from. There were stories from when he was like 8, or I wanted kids of who I'm envisioning as my readers to see that he was not interested in being a superhero. He just wanted to live his life and not be troubled. And then, so he was a reluctant hero, but then when he experienced helping somebody, he got hooked on it. And I think that that for me, that was a critical part of it, you know, to see that, to look at a person who does extraordinary things and ask why they do it.
I got you.
And how, and while it looks extraordinary from this standpoint, at the time he was just living his life. He was just doing what needed. He just needed to do what needed to be done, and he saw that people were in need, and you know, he couldn't turn them away.
I got you.
So yeah.
Let me ask you this. Is there a story, the short answer, is there a story where Black people were against him somehow? Is there some battle? Who are you to do this? Is there anything like that? No.
I didn't get that from him.
So maybe
his
not.
Autobiography.
Yeah.
I didn't know how. No, I think his first reaction to the guy who was trying to get him to do this initially was like, "You're crazy," you know.
Okay.
You know, because he lived down south, and he was like, "I'm not going back there." So I don't think it was like, "Who do you think you are?" But there was a reluctance on his part to initially risk his own life, which is what he was.
And so that's I got you. You
know, he really risked everything every time.
I got you. So now, show us the book again. Tell us how to get copies of the book.
You can get you can download 3 chapters for free. The story where he rescues the infant child from the slave owner's house, that you can download for free to see if you like it. That's at my website, AnnStantonPublications.com.
And say it again.
Ann Stanton, ANNESTANTON.
Right.
AnnStantonPublications.com.
AnnStantonPublications.com. Okay.
And then you can purchase a copy of the book from Amazon.com.
Okay.
Right?
I got you.
And that you can just find it under the title An Upstream Battle.
Okay. Yeah, it's on there, everybody. I that's how I found it real easily. Amazing story.
I know.
Amazing story. I mean, now we find somebody who helped in the Underground Railroad.
There were a lot of people. The one thing that I learned, you know, the way the Underground Railroad is taught in schools, it's like, here's this person and that person and this person. It was a network of people. Maybe not that many, but there was a network of people. And so somebody would come along and maybe, you know, they'd say, oh, they're following him from the west, so let's head them to the east over to Joe's house. Or they're, you know, like, it was a very fluid network of very committed, courageous people. But there were a lot of people, Black and white both. There were a lot of Black people involved in it.
Yeah, unbelievable story. I thank you so very much for telling that and allowing us to hear your story, and everybody get a copy of her book. She says it's easy to read, get it for your kids.
If someone's a teacher, there's a free curriculum on my website.
Yeah, we're gonna do what we can to promote it. That, you know, in my book, Black Business.
Yeah, let's see yours.
I have all the ways that slaves were able to gain their freedom. One of the things that I didn't know was that they were able to buy it. Tremendous story to know that, you know, and then and I hear stories. I hear you were able to sue, you escaped. Some they just let you go free, and then there was other ways, and all that's in my book. Everybody, thank you so very much for watching us here at Strong Inspirations. And Stan, thank you very much for taking your time out to be with
my pleasure
in this story. I really appreciate it. Everybody, if you like the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications button. Go to Ann's website, AnnStantonPublications.com, and go to Amazon. I thank you so very much for watching us. And as I end it, have a strong day, stay strong, and stay safe, everybody. Thank you, Ann. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.